Good evening. Welcome to the April 22nd, 2014 Board of Education meeting. We have been in executive session since 6 o'clock to discuss an individual personnel matter and a contractual matter. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have any participation in government students here this evening? No? All right. Well, if there are any, we will take a break at 9 o'clock, and you can come up and sign out, and we'll sign the sheets. If we get done before 9, then you can leave at that time after you sign out. We'll start with introductions.
Lynn Lenhart. Joanne Cunningham. Kate Navarro. Jody Monroe.
Tom Douglas.
Matt Downey.
Michael Cooper.
Diane Seaver. Charmaine Budgesinger. Judy Kehoe.
Okay. Approval of the minutes of the April 2nd, 2014 regular board meeting, and the minutes of the April 8th, 2014 special board meeting.
So moved. Second.
That's a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. Next, Student Senate. Do we have a representative from the Student Senate here this evening? No? Okay, they might be involved with spring sports. We'll go back to that if they do come in. Superintendent's report. Dr. Douglas?
I can't believe you're moving this fast, so thank you, President Downey. It's my pleasure to report to the board that we have sort of some nice break in the weather after the break, and although it's a little gloomy tonight, spring is certainly flying here at Bethlehem Central. The students are out and about, and we're seeing a change in everybody's winter bloom mood to more of a spring fling mood, and it's really nice to feel and see that return to the exterior of our buildings. So, also tonight we wanted to honor a couple of outstanding achievements, and at this time I'd like to introduce Ms. Melanie Painter, our subject supervisor for our art department, as she presents some of our juried art exhibit awards to the board.
And what I'm going to show you up here is that's just going to scroll through some of the images of the artwork that was selected. This evening, I'd like to congratulate all the students on their creative achievements during the school year. And this year, our K-12 program has been awarded numerous accolades for their achievement and innovation in their artistic achievements. I've invited high school students involved in our most competitive art regionals to join me here this evening. The regionals are divided into categories of drawing, painting, media arts, and three-dimensional art. The students selected for these exhibitions were first juried by a panel of art teachers here at the high school, then faced jurying by a panel of professional artists and educators. Juried acceptance rates into these shows range from about 20 to 28% of the work submitted. The students being honored tonight have had their artwork on display at professional art galleries in the Capital Region. And in addition to the shows, several of our students were also given awards for their artwork, including Cole Reagan for his artwork at the Fulton Montgomery Community College. And I'm going to call you all up at once, so I'll kind of go through everybody. Megan Wenth for her artwork in the Media Arts Festival. Tegan Smazik for her artwork in that as well. Ryan Kennedy for artwork in the Media Arts Festival. Owen Pace, Olivia Conroy, Benjamin Murdoch, Phil Hooper, Luke Kubish, and Emily Bannock. The films being recognized this evening will also be screened at a film closing for the Media Arts Festival on Thursday evening. And I'd like to say I'm very proud of our students. They have the unique opportunity to participate in a wide range of art media here at Bethlehem. We offer a chance for the students to see opportunities for careers in our increasingly visual culture. Among some of the students that you're going to see come up here tonight, they're going on and pursuing careers in animation, graphic design, illustration, filmmaking, and advertising. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome up these students. Megan Wenth, Bridget Reedy, Rachel Begain, Emily Bannock, Tegan Smazik, Addison Myers, come on up here, Kelly Quick, Elizabeth I was told to keep it going. Elizabeth Leupold, Kaylee Conway, Ryan Kennedy, Clara Rissette, Marin McKay, Luke Kubish, Ryan Starr, Cole Reagan, Kendra Bouchard, Owen Pace, Benjamin Murdoch, Olivia Conroy, Stephanie Konis, and Phil Hooper.
Olivia.
Front and back row.
Thank you very much. In addition, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to also ask our supervisor for our science and technology departments to come forward as she presents some of our intel awards.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Gagne, and I am the supervisor for the Science and Technology departments. And I also oversee our 3-year research program here at the high school, which 2 of the students we're going to give awards to tonight. Their presentations and the awards they accepted were part of this program. So we had 3 students that competed at the Intel Science Fair at RPI in late March, and these are students that did authentic research, so they chose some topic that they were interested in. They did in-depth research about that topic, and then they actually did hands-on research and wrote a paper about their findings in their own research. They then presented at this fair with over 90 students. There's approximately 12 awards handed out. We had 3 students participate, and all 3 students won an award, and one of our students won an award and a cash award. So I would like to recognize each one of them, and then I'll have them all come up at the end. So our first student is Elizabeth Coltrera. She did her work on aquaponics and actually grew plants in Albany, at the Albany Radix Center, which is a renewable resource area that has many activities going on. She did all of her research there and then presented on that. So she was awarded the Stockholm Junior Water Prize, and winning this award also gives her the right to participate at the national level for this award, so we are awaiting to hear the results from that. The next student is Thomas Sheridan, and he had been doing work on carbon sequestration, which is trying to pull carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere as part of trying to keep reducing climate change. And he did some work with a researcher at RPI, and then built his own chamber to capture carbon and did his research out of his garage. And he was awarded the American Meteorological Society Award. And then finally, Daniel Wilkinson is a part of our lab school program, and he did his work on the canal systems and introducing wind turbines to the canal systems to help them require less energy and have them, be able to maintain all of their materials and machinery without needing to pull energy from the grid. And he was awarded the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Award, it's NOAA. And then he was also awarded the National Grid Award for Energy and the Environment. So congratulations to those 3 students. If they could come up, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, also, if you're able to stick around for the rest of the board meeting after we're through, ladies and gentlemen, members of the community, these are just some prime examples of our fine and practical arts area as well as our core curriculum areas of the accomplishments of our students. We also have accomplishments of our alumni, and last night on The Voice, one of our top 12 contestants, Danny Mozaleski, was competing, and I imagine they're on in probably about another hour. They'll find out the results of that, but we wish her the best as she represents her family and most importantly, the community of Bethlehem. So way to go for all of our accomplishments that represent what the district does for its community. In addition, it's important to note that last Friday, and we finally confirmed it after we were told through a third source that our bond project has been approved by the State Education Department, and therefore, starting tomorrow, we will go out to bid with the anticipation of starting our bond project sometime in the middle of June. So we're hoping that our bidding season will be very successful and that by the end of May, we will hopefully be bringing before the board potential accepted bids to commence the project and move within the next 2-year timeline. We would ask everyone to please understand that during this 2-year period, there will be times of inconvenience and opportunities that as we try to stick to a deadline or a timeline, there are absolutely issues and items that are not within our control. So we will try to make it as peaceful, and as you can see, please excuse the mess. We're under construction out there for everyone at each of our buildings. But I know we'll be hearing from each of the playground committees that were out there shortly when we get to the public comment side, because we also have some donations from their hard work over the past year and a half. So it's a good thing for the district as we've kept to our timeline. Even though it's been a little tight, we're going to be able to move forward and hopefully see the benefit, seeing how it's raining out, and I know our fields won't hold much water right now. So, but also the most important thing, our roofs are holding the water for now, and we want to keep it that way. In addition, at the last board meeting, the Board of Education asked us to come back with some information or some of our work as we started to establish a committee for the review in the entirety of the lab school program from our comments at the last board meeting. One of the things is that I had conducted over the past 2 weeks is establishing a committee and announcing that committee structure. Although I haven't had time to draft the charges, I'll have that within the next 2 board meetings prior to the committee being formed. The committee will primarily consist of, as in the inception of lab school, district administration, high school administration, potentially a middle school administrator, and members of the BCTA, because that's where the inception was. At that time, there may not have been a heavy parent involvement or student involvement, but seeing how we have 20 years of experience, I would recommend that there would be some limited parent and student involvement at the direction of whoever is assigned the co-chairs of the committee. So just so that the board's aware, the 2 district representatives would be selected by me, and at this time I've selected our assistant superintendent, Ms. Monroe, and our director of special education, Ms. Johnson, because both have the curriculum and the special ed components that the program would be responsible for, which is part of our core mission. In addition, I would go to Mr. Klugman, who is the president of the BPA, and ask him to select 2 high school administrators and 1 middle school administrator, and that will be a discussion that we will have in regards to the near future on their selection, because they will make the selection, not myself. And then also from the BCTA, I've allotted 6 positions for that committee, with the makeup being roughly 4 teachers, comprised of at least 2 lab school teachers from the 2014-15 school year, and 2 teachers from the general populace education program for the 2014-15 school year. In addition, I would ask that, because there's a heavy relationship between any type of course offerings and the curriculum that must go through our supervisor's office, that 1 K-12 supervisor be appointed, and also because it deals with the guidance and our future aspirations of our students, 1 guidance counselor also be supplied. These 6 members will be appointed by the leadership of the Bethlehem Central Teachers Association, which in the essence of the inception of the lab school was the foundation of how lab school came into birth 20, 21 years ago. In addition, I would ask the high school PTA or PTO leadership that they would end up, as they represent all parents, all students at the high school, to select 2 representatives. Preferably, there would be some conditions that either it could be 1 lab school parent from 2014-2015 and 1 general parent from 2014-15, or 2 parents who have children both in lab school and/or the general ed setting in 2014 and 15. That way, there is a balance of perceptions on each of the levels as much as possible. In addition, 2 student representatives that would be selected by the Student Senate under the advisement of the advisor, preferably, again, 1 student from lab school for 2014-15 and 1 student from the general school 2014-15. However, with both the parent and the student representatives as the board, because there are potential contract, personnel, and other discussions that could potentially happen because it is a meeting of administration and the collective bargaining agents, what happens is parents and students will be requested by whoever is set as the co-chairs for the appropriateness of those discussions at that time. In essence, what would happen is between now and roughly, say, next, I think, October, they would be working on the review of the lab school program and the concerns that we've heard, as well as other concerns that may be discussed at that time, whatever comes up with the committee, that somewhere between October and November, they would report back, once I've charged them, to the superintendent with possible recommendations, possible thoughts, possible options, or considerations, or just adjustments. It's really up to that committee. And then working through here, ultimately, the superintendent would make any potential recommendations or any review elements for the board to consider. What I'm hoping is by late November to December of 2014. So does that sound like what we talked about, and is the board okay with that?
And so what would be the curricular implications for the schedule, or do we would adjust that?
Well, what would happen is, no matter what, they would have to address the issue that we've been experiencing with class size and section and enrollment would have to be looked at over that time, and recommendations would have to come forward. I would probably say that we don't want to be revisiting this from year in to year out, as the fiscal realities and the needs of the schedule, the finances of the district, the scheduling of the district would have to be addressed during that time. And that would be the expectation, that that is resolved by that time for the next budget season. What it is, I don't know. That's what the committee would.
Right.
Anyone have any concerns?
It sounds good, sounds like good representation.
Okay. Fair enough timeline too, and that way it's before recruitment and everything. Okay. In addition, because of this, what happens is like we said, we started to talk about the fact that the only reason we were in this at the last board meeting was simply the fact that we moved our scheduling process almost 2 months forward. And as a result of that, although it wasn't necessarily budgetary, it was sectioning wise, we are at a point that the high school administration has informed me, as well as Ms. Monroe, that the schedule at this point of all the requests has been run, whether it's 1, 2, or 3 times, I don't know, but with their moving around of certain classes, certain sections, they are at roughly a 90.2 seat successfully filled of all the requests. As a former high school principal, that's probably one of the higher numbers that I've ever seen. And I would be happy as a principal, because I'd always settle around 85, 86, and then everything else would be hand scheduled. But with less than 10% of the student requests not being able to be scheduled for one reason or another, this schedule is pretty much becoming locked in. That would also allow us to keep the schedule currently as it is in regards to math 4, math 5, French 5, and Spanish 4 in the lab school. And no other programs in those areas would be affected, and the staffing would not change going into next year. However, it must be understood that the staffing must change the following year. So that's what I have to report back whether the board wishes that to happen, because those numbers would be lower than enrollment, we would need to know from the board at this time.
You mentioned that it's 92% or whatever, is that
90.2.
Is that based on first request, or is that based on?
That's based on the request. It doesn't necessarily say first request or anything. Everybody has a bunch of requests that they put in, whether it's 8, 9, 10, 7.
And this wouldn't affect any other students in the high school?
That we're aware of at this point, no.
What I will say is, I do appreciate the time and energy and the work that you've put in for the last 2 weeks about convening the committee and hearing some of the concerns the board raised, as well as some of the concerns the parents raised. I've done a lot of thinking, and I've learned a lot through your research that you've reported back on the board, some of the complexities of making changes for the coming year in the lab school due to class size. I will say, as a board member, I support you going forward with the committee. I appreciate all the time and energy. I do have concerns with classes running at the numbers that they will be running at the lab school. I don't care if it was the lab school or the general school, because of the low numbers and the guidelines the board has set. However, because it seems like it's in the best interest of the students, and you have touched base with the leadership of the teachers union, the lab school folks, and you've done a full, I'm satisfied with the analysis that you've done and come back with your recommendation. I will support that. I do not agree with classes. I need to have that on record. I do not agree with classes running on those numbers, regardless of what
And
school.
I think that would be the intent of the committee, that must be addressed in the coming year.
I fully agree with the plan, and I think it's in the best interest of everybody that we have some breathing room in order to allow this committee to do its work, so we can plan for the future of the lab school and get away from the acrimony that has developed over the last couple of weeks. So I fully support for this 1 year proceeding with plans as they are, and then we'll see where the committee recommendations go.
I like it. I like the plan, and I appreciate sort of, the step back and kind of looking at it with some perspective, because I think that one of the things that I heard was, maybe the potential for some unintended consequences. And I like this because it's kind of giving you a little bit more of a lead time to give a thoughtful evaluation, of really what the needs are of the program, what the realities are of the district with respect to fiscal pressures, and how you navigate that and kind of put the pieces together to preserve the essence of it, but still reflecting the fiscal realities that the district is facing with respect to enrollment and class sizes and teachers and that kind of thing. So I think sounds like a good plan.
I support the plan too, but I also want to point out that, historically, we have had small classes for, accelerated classes at times, for advanced classes, advanced AP classes. So it's not unusual to be doing this. I think, we've been suffering from the fiscal climate and making the cuts, but we still have been offering some of those classes below the recommended guidelines for class size.
I think it's up to the board. Like, one of the things is, although we're 2 months ahead, normally at the end of the year, the board would receive it, and then we would justify why certain classes would have to run, and there's a certain limit to even those classes, no matter what classes they are, that they shouldn't be reoccurring each year. If possible, they should be trying to build their enrollment, or sooner or later, you have to review the situation.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah, and I support it. Again, I think Lynn had asked the question that it's not impacting any other students in the regular high school, so.
So it seems we have consensus of the board? Okay, then I'll notify the effective agencies to, probably within the next 24 to 48 hours, to consider their selection and appointment, and they will get it back to me by, I think it's May 12th. So, thank you, and that concludes my report back to the board.
Okay, great. Next is the Board of Education report. I know myself, I was out of vacation, so I don't have much to report, except for the school was closed on vacation, and
Did you have a good
good thing,
vacation?
because they had might have had a snow day, I don't know.
The Saturday before last, Lynn and I were able to go to NYSBA's Student Achievement Institute, which featured Dr. Bill Daggett, who's the founder of the International Center for Leadership in Education. And it was a full-day workshop on Common Core and what has led to the development of Common Core and what the implications are educationally of the Common Core. If you haven't had a chance to hear Bill Daggett speak, he's a wonderful speaker, but he's also very sobering at times because he brings a lot of statistics and information to the table. And he showed that American education has been developing. The problem is that the knowledge gap, because of the information world we're living in, continues to expand as well. So we can't be complacent, and that we need to continue to strive to develop our students. And there was a very good discussion between somebody from the business world and the higher education world on what it is that they are looking for from high school students. So I've got the PDFs of the PowerPoint presentation, so if anybody's interested in seeing those, let me know and I can send them to you. But I thought it was a great program that NYSBA put together. It was unfortunate that it was the first Saturday of the vacation because the turnout was, I think, fairly light. But I thought that also made it good for the attendees because there was a lot of give and take both during the sessions and during lunch and other times where you had a lot of time to talk to other board members who were there. And there was a lot of back and forth during the presentations. So I thought it was a very valuable day.
And I was able to, just to add to that, we had 5 of them, and I was able to attend 4 out of the 5. And it was just interesting to see how different districts around the state are looking at the Common Core learning standards and what they're doing in their schools, and you know the different programs, and you know how they're looking at it and addressing it, and you know very successfully. And in contrast, a little bit at the national level, at that national conference I was at, there are many skeptics regarding the Common Core learning standards. In fact, the Delegate Assembly wouldn't even approve a resolution supporting the Common Core learning standards. They renamed it higher standards. Well, we're all for higher standards, including the Common Core learning standards, but they wouldn't separate it out by itself. And I think some states are kind of leaning away from it. But I think what we have found with these Student Achievement Institutes, that there were a lot of people that had misconceptions and didn't really understand what they were. And I think that has helped. And we're planning on a few more around the state in some of the areas that, you know, weren't covered. The Southern Tier, there might even be one that's close enough that maybe some of you be able to attend, because they really were worthwhile. The discussion was worthwhile.
Anyone else?
I know that you and Mike and I attended the CAPSPA meeting before the break, and that was also on the Common Core with a panel. Very interesting discussion. Folks were talking about the standards plus implementation, and I learned a lot about the background of it, and I thought they did a good job. Also, I want to congratulate the athletic department, and particularly the track program. There was a massive track meet here this past Saturday, the Lady Eagles Invitational, with I don't know how many schools participated, but a large number of athletes and all the equipment and all, and it seemed like it ran flawlessly with a lot of photo booths and food. It was really a festival, per se, of young women's track and field athletics, and as far as I could tell, it seemed to go off extremely well, and I know the Booster Club also was very involved in helping that event be successful.
All All right, next on the agenda is our presentations. There will be the budget workshop presentation, and then we'll have a discussion. and hopefully-
Actually, if we can modify that, because what is missing is our Chinese presentation. That should be first, so if I missed one.
Okay.
Sorry about that. Okay, you got it. Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. And at our last meeting, we spoke a little bit about the issues facing our Chinese program, and the board asked if I could come back with some additional information and recommendations for you to think about or consider as we move forward. So last week I spoke about the challenges facing the Chinese program, and I don't think this is new to anyone, certainly not those who have been involved in the program or the board who've, we've discussed these. But essentially, we've had a lot of inconsistent staffing. We've had about, believe, 6 teachers over the last 7 years. We've had difficulty in finding certified teachers. We also, at the onset of the program, had a plan that we would grow the program or expand the program. And beginning in 6th grade, which is when our language program begins, at the initial onset, the goal was to essentially grow the program so we had 2 sections of Chinese at every grade level, and eventually have programs into the high school as well, similar to what we have for French and Spanish, where students can take that language beyond 10th grade for AP offerings or university in the high school credit or higher level classes. And we simply have not been able to do that, and the numbers have been fairly either lower than we've expected, even for one section, or inconsistent. So in a phase-out plan that we spoke about last week, I broke it down this week to kind of highlight the incoming 9th and 10th graders, as those are the students who've been in the Chinese program, typically since 6th grade. Some may have come in 7th grade. And in a 2-year phase-out plan, this would basically allow these students to finish the Chinese program by the end of 10th grade. If we cannot find, what we would do obviously first is we would look for a certified part-time teacher. That's our goal always. But we also have been exploring distance learning options with other districts. The challenge that presents obviously is in scheduling, because if they're a host district or we're a host district, you always are relying on when those students are available to take a distance learning course. There also are some online programs that we've been exploring as well, which provide some different levels of Chinese, which could be matched up to students at the high school level. Upon completion of Chinese 3, which would be at the end of 10th grade, students would have credits that they would need for the Advanced Regents Diploma. They could then switch to another language if they chose to. We do have a lot of students in the high school who maybe take Spanish or French up till 10th grade, or continue even and take Latin. We do have that as an offering, as an elective program at the high school. So that would be an option for those students entering after 9th and 10th grade. They could elect another language, or they could take another course if they chose to. For the 7th and 8th grade students, our recommendation is still that they enroll in an accelerated Spanish course. Although we begin language in 6th grade, many school districts do not begin in 6th grade. Some begin in 7th grade, some don't begin until 8th grade. The state only requires a 1-year language credit in middle school with a proficiency at the end of middle school for that 1 unit of high school credit. So we feel at this point that the best course for those students in 7th and 8th grade would be to enroll in Spanish. We wouldn't not allow students if they really wanted to go into French, although we feel that they would need to do some work on their own, and they may be able to do that. We do have students who come in, for example, transfer into our district from another district who don't have a language background, and some of them go into Spanish and French, and our teachers are very good about making sure that those students get caught up. As they enter 8th and 9th grade, these students would be on track for their advanced Regents requirements at the completion of 10th grade. And it would also allow them to continue in higher level courses in Spanish if they chose the accelerated Spanish option, or if they chose to elect another language in high school, they could certainly do that as well. So the concern that came up is, why would we not allow middle school students to continue with Chinese? And I certainly understand the frustration from parents and students as well. However, this would end up being a 4-year phase-out time period, and we do not believe would be able to find a teacher who would be willing to stay in a program knowing that each year it's getting smaller and smaller. We've had a lot of problems finding a teacher for the program from year to year to begin with. So when a program is phasing out, we don't believe that we would be able to adequately staff that program. Students would still not have the option of higher level courses in Chinese, which again, I feel is a disservice to our students. Students who are in French and Spanish have the ability to continue with those languages all 4 years of high school and take other languages. In Chinese, they do not have that option. And we believe that if we shift the language now in the middle school, that they will actually have a stronger language program and have more options in the future. So we are planning to host a parent meeting April 30th at the middle school to talk more specifically about the plan for each of those grade levels, and also answer specific questions parents have that may be more relevant to their student at that grade level, and what potential courses of action may be for them to consider. And then we really do need to make a final decision though by May 8th, because we need to plan what classes those students would be scheduled into in the accelerated program in the middle school, obviously, and then what program we would be offering for students in 9th and 10th grade, whether it's distance learning, online, part-time teacher, a combination of those options. So any questions the board has at this time?
I just want to
Lynn?
make a comment. We started maybe 10, 12, I'm trying to remember, 10 or 12 years ago, a Russian program, and we ended up in a similar situation. I blamed its demise on the end of the Cold War, and Russian wasn't the language to know, but certainly Chinese is the language to know in the global economy. And I would want parents and students to understand that this is something we really wanted to do, but if we can't get the enrollment, and certainly the staffing has been much more difficult than I think anyone would have envisioned, to find people, whether part-time or whatever, and to be certified.
Right.
Unfortunately, they have to be in order to teach. It's really been regrettable. I understand what we probably are going to have to do, and maybe there's still some alternatives, but I guess I just want to make sure people understand this. It's not a case where we want to eliminate the program, or whether it was a budget reason, really. It isn't. It's just the fact that we have so many challenges facing it, and
I
can't continue.
Yeah, I think that both Dr. Bell and myself are very discouraged with the lack of participation in the program, and that we haven't really been able to grow it, the inconsistency in staffing, and really questioning is, to put students into a program that you feel is not living up to the standards of our other programs, and knowing that at the end those students won't have the same opportunities, just personally doesn't sit well with me. And I think that If we can make a change that's better for the students' overall language experience, I think that's wise. And who knows, maybe down the road as we've talked to many other districts, we've been in touch with the Language Center, we've been in touch with colleges, we've talked to a lot of different people, and the schools that are trying to offer this are having similar struggles with their participation as well as staffing. So, you know, not that it makes it any easier for us, but
Right.
we're not kind of alone in our experience here.
Jody, you had mentioned that not every student takes a language in 6th and 7th grade, and some kids currently take Spanish in 7th. They started in 8th grade.
Correct.
Even if they've been in the district in 6th and 7th grade.
Correct.
And the success rate is
Our students perform very well on, even the students who only have 1 year in the proficiency, they all get their high school unit of credit if need be, whether they come into the district or they've been in the district and they haven't been in a language. And certainly we have great rates for our regions, our passing rate and mastery rates at the high school level. So I think our faculty do a great job knowing that students are coming potentially from other districts where they don't have the same background, or they're coming in to a class where maybe they don't have the same level of teaching in that language. They're just very good at diversifying for that.
Anyone else? Yeah, Joanne.
I guess and this is an issue that a lot of people kind of raised with me over the past 2 weeks, a lot of parents out there. You know, and one thing I think, and Lynn said it, but just to underscore it, this is not a budget decision that was, you know, something to put on the chopping block to eliminate because of a fiscal. You know, I mean, one of the things I think that people don't realize, or if you think about it, it's a real conundrum because you want this program. It's in this precarious state because, you know, enrollment's kind of not where it should be, and, you know, the staffing, like you said, you know, the history of it has been very inconsistent and, you know, not a good thing when you're trying to anchor a language program to have 6 teachers in 7 years, certainly. So it's just one of those issues. You know, I would have loved for my kids to take Chinese, but, you know, it's one of those things where you look out and you wonder, you know, what is the future of it? You want it to be there, yet, you know, the enrollment kind of understanding the precarious future of it isn't there. So it's just this cyclical problem that I wish was easily solved. It just doesn't seem like, and you know, I really appreciate all the time that you and Tom, you have put in trying to kind of be creative and think of ways and kind of solve this problem. It's just not easily, there's no quick solution. And, you know, I think a lot of people sort of look out and say, well, you know, there's lots of people who speak Chinese out there. Why can't we get one of those competent people? Well, we're, you know, public school, we need a certified teacher, and that isn't a readily available option. You know, so as far as the inconsistency over the years. So, you know, I appreciate the work that you've done and really the thoughtfulness that you've tried to approach this. And I wish there were better answers, but it doesn't appear that there are.
And I would say, I know we're continuing, I had a discussion as late as this afternoon to find out that, you know, I never tried to name the district or the individuals that I'm talking to, but other like-minded districts in the area are having the same difficulty. And to the point that the person I talked to said that they're basically on a year-to-year, and the students are taking a gamble in those districts because they may have to start all over depending on whether or not they have a enrollment or an instructor. The limitations on making sure that first and foremost we have a United States citizen in a position of employment with a public school is one of the first and foremost, and then on top of that, having somebody that's a certified teacher poses unique stresses on any program such as this at this point. And I think that's the dilemma the district has been facing from the number one piece that I think this program's had, even before I've been here, 5 or 6 teachers over a 5 or 6 year period. And no matter what, it's hard to build enrollment because, I mean, if you're looking at it, is that enrollment going to be there? The district can say it's going to be there. You just never can really see what the crystal ball holds because different things happen, whether it's on a teacher's life, administrator's life, a student's life. There's changes that come in, and trying to adapt to that with the many opportunities or many options that you have to try to balance becomes very difficult, and that's what we found. It doesn't mean that it's hopeless, but it doesn't mean that there's the best alternative. One of the things Ms. Monroe and I talked about today, and I know I've had a meeting with a couple parents, that I said, if I make my best educational recommendation for the students that are in the most vulnerable position, which is most likely the middle school students, that recommendation would be, and I sort of put it in I said it as straightforward as I could. I put the students, no matter what, in either 7th grade or 8th grade Spanish because they have the most amount of options available to them over their high school career. Because we teach Spanish in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, we're actually teaching 1 year of Spanish over 3 years, not 3 years of Spanish and trying to make it up in 1 year. And that's always been the case in New York State. So what would happen is a 7th grade student would be entering about a third of the curriculum behind at one point in 7th grade, but by the end of 7th grade would be virtually almost on track where their peers would be. And then in 8th grade, exactly on track as any other student in Spanish. A student going into 8th grade would make up and do the entire coursework of that Spanish during the 1 year like other students, either in our special needs population or in general ed population, and at the end of 8th grade, automatically caught up. If we continue or prolong the issue, I told the parents, we do put some unknown risk out there. Again, that what if we were able to find a teacher that could be 0.8 or 0.4 if we needed? Then all of a sudden, come next December, that teacher takes a full-time job. What do we do then? What happens to the student? Now they're even farther in sort of farther into a pickle because we may not have a viable option for another 4 to 6 months. That would be my recommendation to the parents of why I would probably guide them that way. I know it's hard. We're out there looking, but we also can't discuss everything with the parents or the community in regards to certain items that we must deal with administratively as an employer and as some of the rights. So we have to balance all of that. Unfortunately, it sometimes seems that we can't talk about some things, but unfortunately, that is the situation.
Anyone else, any comments for Dr. Douglas or Jody? Okay.
So just to
Thank you.
clarify, you want us to take action at the next board
Well,
meeting?
we'll still look at some things. I mean, we also want to talk to the parents. I mean, we already know some parents on their own, even after receiving the letter from Dr. Bell, have opted to make certain decisions for their own families. Whether or not that's heavy-handed or being forced into it, I can't say, but we know there's going to be some transitions and everyone's going to probably be on different levels. I think the parent meeting allows Ms. Monroe, Dr. Bell to be able to discuss some options and why their recommendations would be that, and then allow parents a little more time. But if we also come up with anything, because we still have feelers out there, I just don't know if those feelers are going to play out. 2 weeks is relatively a short time, and I'd like to make sure the board understands this is not something that's been worked on for just 2 weeks. It's something that has been a concern over the past couple of years, and each time we go into hiring, we know it, so we have a strong sense of experience there. And I know Dr. Bell and Ms. Monroe have been looking at this as they've gone over the past several weeks. So it's not something that is just, in 2 weeks, this is what we've got. We still would continue to exhaust some of our avenues.
Thank you, Jody. Next is the budget workshop session. We'll have a presentation by Judy Keough.
Judy, sorry, I really messed that up. And Jill. I was just trying to get you out of it. Want me to get you in? Here, I'll do it. Sure. There you go.
Thank you.
Okay, just a second. Here, let me.
We're so good, we'll do it again.
Because I'm sure
Technology,
you
isn't
don't
it
want to hear the
wonderful?
presentation from the 8th all over again, so we'll go with
I
the
think
fresh
Kate does.
material that we have for tonight.
The mouse is not coming back.
Watching the laptop, that was tough.
All right, Nick's on it.
You go ahead.
You know what they say about too many cooks in the kitchen, or?
That was supposed to be a time saver, Tom. What?
422.
Thank you. When the governor's budget was adopted by the state legislature a few weeks back, one of the elements that was included within that was a new 2-year property tax freeze. That's indirectly related to the budget, but it has some information that I think the community would be very interested in hearing about, so we want to cover some of that information tonight. And then also associated with our budget development is the Town of Bethlehem's property reassessment project that is in its final stages. And that will have some impacts that we want to make sure people are aware of as it relates to the school budget. And then last but not least, of course, is the review and adoption of the final budgeted numbers for the 14-15 school year. Along with that is the property tax report card, a mandatory disclosure that we have to provide to the state. So we'll move through those items this evening. First up, the property tax freeze. This is a program that will benefit certain residential homeowners. Its eligibility is linked to the current eligibility requirements for the STAR program. So it only affects your primary residence within the Bethlehem Central School District, and it has income limitations, so your household income has to be at or below $500,000. They set certain provisions in the first year and the second year of the program. In the first year, it's a simple requirement that all municipal entities have to stay within the tax cap. In the second year, they add on another element to that, where not only do you have to stay within the tax cap, but you have to develop a plan to achieve what they're calling real savings. Of course, we're always interested in
What have we been doing for the last 5 years?
you're stealing my thunder, because of course we have been attaining some real savings over the last 5 years from restructurings and reductions. So we've come out several $1 million to the good in terms of cost controls and revenue ideas. So we are committed, of course, to continuing to look for those types of savings going forward. But we don't have any firm guidance from the state yet as to what that will look like. So that will be one of the key areas that we look for additional information on from the state so that we can see what it will take in order to enable residents to potentially take advantage of that rebate in year 2 of this tax freeze. What will happen initially, assuming the budget is adopted at or below the tax cap, a rebate check will come out to homeowners probably in late October or early November. In January, any of the
tax bills that are issued in January, which would be your county, your town, your special districts, assuming all of those entities are at or below the tax cap, then that would make those bills subject to a possible rebate. And then again, fall of 2015. We believe that the state is going to not do a separate rebate check following the January property tax bills, that they'll combine that with the school's year 2 participation in this program, so that a single check will go out to the residents. And then in 2016, that would be the last year of the 2-year cycle, and that would be benefiting solely the January tax bills that come out from county, town, and other special districts. When State Tax and Finance issued this initial implementation guidance, we scoured the information so that we could see what this would mean to everybody. It's determined to be the greater of 2 distinct amounts. The first is either the actual increase in your school tax bill from 2013 to 14, or similarly, the January to January increases for the municipal taxes. It's either that amount or 1.46 times the amount of your 2013 school tax bill. Now, if that number sounds familiar to you, it's for good reason. That is the inflation factor that is part of the tax cap calculations. So that's where they picked the 1.46 number from. So to give you some examples, if your school tax for the 13-14 year was at $5,000, and for this coming fall tax bill, it goes up to $5,100, that increase is $100. That is more than 1.46% of the $5,000 from 13-14. So in that instance, the rebate check would be about $100. In the second example, if the bill goes up by $50, that amount, in fact, would be less than the 1.46 amount. So in that instance, you would get a higher rebate amount. So it seems to be good news for taxpayers because everybody will get something from this rebate program, assuming the municipality complies with the tax cap. But the actual amount, of course, is going to be as determined by the Commissioner of Tax and Finance. So there are a number of elements within the bill. For instance, if you put an addition on your house, that is supposedly going to be factored in and reduce the amount of the rebate, but they haven't issued any other guidance on what that looks like. So if those are the types of changes in place, we'll have to keep watching for updates from them so that we can see what that will mean to taxpayers. The townwide reassessment has been going on for a number of months now. Actually, over the last year, all the residents have received their preliminary assessed values, and there's a review process going on now at the town level where people can seek to have those amounts reviewed and or lowered. The assessment values are really critical to the whole manner in which taxes are levied, and particularly so for school districts, because school districts often have more than one community within their tax jurisdictional boundaries. And what happens is if everybody is not on a level playing field with those assessments, it can result in an uneven distribution of taxes between homeowners who happen to be in the same school district but who live in 2 different communities. So for a graphic example of how these equalization rates work and how you even that out. In Bethlehem and New Scotland, we're very fortunate because once again this year, it looks like those equalization rates are both going to be at full value or 100% of the current values. But if you had 2 towns within a school district where those assessment values were not current, if you had 2 identical homes, one that might be assessed at $50,000, the other that has been recently assessed and whose value is reflective of market might be at $175,000. You can imagine what would happen when the tax bills come out then, where town A, that resident would be paying far less than their fair share of taxes just by virtue of the fact that the assessments were not at the same level. So that's why we have the equalization rate, so that we can make sure that that is distributed fairly. When the assessment or the equalization rates are the same, what that means is that you will get the same tax rates. Last year, if you remember, was the first year in a long time that the tax rates were the same for both residents of Bethlehem and for New Scotland. So once again this year, because those equalization rates are both going to continue at 100%, those tax rates will once again be the same. And it hasn't always been the case. Each year when we're going through the budget public hearing presentation, where we show you, for instance, what the levy increase is that comes to the school district, you can see that the actual tax rate increases, in this example, just over the last 5 years, has not resulted in the same amount of tax increases. And in fact, the numbers can vary wildly. If you look at 2011, where the school district received 2% more in the levy, Bethlehem taxpayers actually had a 2.35% rate increase by virtue of the shifting equalization rates and changes in the overall assessed values, and the New Scotland residents were only at 0.21%. And again, that is just by virtue of the shifting equalization rates. So it certainly simplifies my world of calculating these tax rates when both communities are at the 100%, and I think it certainly simplifies it for the residents, where what they expect to happen with the rates is what results in happening with those rates. Now, there are other factors that go into rate shifts as well. For instance, if you have an increase in the overall assessed value for a particular community, so if you have a lot of either residential or commercial growth that boosts up the value in the assessments, that means that you have more people who are sharing in the taxes for a particular entity. So the general rule to keep in mind is, as those assessed values go up, the tax rates actually go down. So if nothing else changed, if there was no change in the overall levy amount, increasing assessments would yield a lower tax rate. Certainly, if you increase the amount of the levy, that would be affecting the tax rates going forward. The one thing that does not directly affect the tax rates are the STAR exemption amounts. That is the state program where they determine what the credit is that will go on an individual homeowner's tax bill. But what they do is they take that off the resident's bill and then they pay it to the school districts as a separate amount. So it's a little quirky the way it's set up, but that's the way it works. From the figures that we obtained from the town of Bethlehem, for the residential parcels only, 40% of the residential parcels within town did not have a change in their assessed values at all. So that meant that their home was at the value that is deemed to be current market value. 15% of the residential properties had their assessment decrease from last year to this year. And then there was another 23% where the assessment increased, but it was at the level of 10% or lower compared to last year's number. So if you look at those three slices of the pie there in blue, that's 78% of the residential parcels that in fact will see less than 10% or lower increase in their assessed values. And that means that the majority of people are going to have much less of an impact when this budget is adopted for the school district. There were about 22% of the overall assessments that in fact increased by more than 10%. So that was just a function of reflecting the current market values for those parcels. Normally, we would not be doing tax rates this early. We don't usually finalize those until August because we have to allow time for the town of Bethlehem and New Scotland to go through and finish processing exemptions, going through the grievance period. But we know that this is kind of the burning question that everybody wants to hear about. So we will give you some examples of what those tax rates look like. And just remember that I will be updating that as we get closer to August, where we adopt the final tax rates. I wanted to start with a $250,000 home where there has been no change in the assessed value by virtue of the reval process. So remember, this affects about 40% of the community. The tax rate for 2013-14 is $21.60. If we took the exact same tax levy as we had in place last year and we divide that into the new higher assessed values, it basically went up about $200 million from the reval. You can see what happens. Think of those two green arrows. If the assessments go up, the rates go down. The projected tax rate, if we did not have an increase in the levy, would be about $20.22. So that means for a $250,000 home, because the rate is lower, you would actually be paying $344 less in taxes by virtue of that rate dropping. We have been talking about a tax levy increase of 2.99%. So if you calculate what that tax rate would look like with that level of increase in the levy, you're looking at about $20.83. So if you apply that times this $250,000 assessed value, that's still a reduction of about 77 cents per thousand, or $193 less than you would have paid last year. Now think to what I just covered a moment ago as it relates to the rebates as part of the tax freeze. There isn't an increase. The higher of those two numbers would be the 1.46% times last year's taxes, and that would be a rebate of around $79. So not only would you have lower tax bill, you would also be eligible for the rebate by virtue of the fact that we are within the tax cap. Now, I don't want anybody to go home and take this slide and go look at their actual tax bill, because the number is not going to match exactly. This excludes any taxes for the library, which is also part of your tax bill, and it does not factor in the STAR exemptions. Those exemptions will vary depending on what type of STAR exemption you have. So this is really just for illustrative purposes only. So what that looks like for your tax bill, again, the same $250,000 home times those tax rates, where you would have paid $5,399 last year. With the 2.99% levy, that would drop it to $5,207. I also wanted to give you an example of a $250,000 home that saw an increase of 10% in the assessed value. So where you would have been at $250,000 for the fall 2013 tax bill, to increase that value by 10% would put you up to $275,000. So using the same tax rate calculations that we had on the prior slide, you multiply that estimated tax rate times the higher $275,000 assessment, and your increase is about $328. So again, it is an increase, but part of that increase is from the increase in the value of the home, bringing it up to market. And again, the rebate, it could be a little bit higher. We still don't have the final guidance from the state on how that is going to be calculated when there is a reval situation going on. But at a minimum, it would be at that $79 level, which would help offset that tax increase. Here is one of the biggest takeaways that I hope everybody in the community gains from this presentation tonight. Usually when there is a reval in place, there is a semi-panic that occurs because everybody assumes that your rates from the prior year are in fact going to go up by virtue of the percentage increase in the levy, and then that higher rate is what is multiplied times your new assessed value. That's not how it works. Assessment up, rates down. So if you were to carry this through with a 2.99% increase times last year's rate, and then multiply that by the $275,000 assessment, that would be $6,100, and rightfully perhaps a cause for people to be concerned about that degree of increase. That is not how it's calculated, and you would not expect to see that as part of your fall 2014 tax bill. So, we will keep you posted as we get additional clarifications on this tax freeze legislation, but it does appear to generate refunds for qualifying residential properties. Remember, you still will need to pay your tax bill when that's issued in the fall, hopefully without penalty. And then you would see your refund check coming in from the Commissioner of Tax and Finance after that, probably around early November. Okay.
Judy, has the state estimated how much it's going to cost to actually figure out what everybody's rebate is, and then to print the checks and mail the checks to everybody right before Election Day? I mean, it seems that at a time when they're still withholding $3.1 million of state aid to our district in the gap elimination adjustment, that they have the money to do that, but not to give us the money that certainly is owed us. And certainly we could end up with a lower tax rate and reduce the taxes probably by more than what the rebate would be.
So I would have to agree with you that there was probably a lower administrative cost for the state were they to merely have increased the aid by reducing that gap elimination adjustment. There is clearly an administrative cost for implementing this, for coming up with the software that will do these calculations. There's administrative costs for us as well, because we have to take these tax data files and now transmit them up to the state level too. So yes, there are a number of administrative costs. I don't know that they've estimated that at this point, but
I was being facetious.
no, I know.
I know the state number was about $1.5 billion would be the potential cost of this program. And it's interesting because you bring up the GEA, that 1.2 is what's left. If they would have spent that and replaced everyone's GEA, if we could have had the $3.1 million that we're still owed in this, it would virtually take care of our budget. It would, I mean, hypothetically, it would take care of our budget, it would take care of our reliance on fund balance. We'd still probably have the reductions that we have for this year, because there are other reasons. But on top of it, virtually would not have to have a levy for 1 year, which would be truly a tax freeze. And I know if that's the case for us, it's probably the case for a majority of businesses. And if you could repeat when those checks were coming out, because I don't think the camera heard.
What, at the end of October,
Yeah, just
before
before
Election Day? Another question too, before you go on to the regular budget stuff, Judy. You know, we've been reassessed. I mean, it used to be years ago, we weren't at full value, and then court case determined we had to go to full value. And since that happened, we've been reassessed in the town a couple of times. But this seems to have created more of an uproar this time. And, you know, as people grieve their assessments, I mean, that could have a large impact on the total assessment, which would change the numbers dramatically, you know, that we're going to use in August to set the tax rate.
That's a good point. I'm glad that you mentioned that. I did make assumptions in those calculations. So where we got the raw numbers from the town, where the values were set at what the consultants placed as a value on all of these properties, I lowered that by 3% to take into account what the potential reductions might be from the grievance process. Again, that's just a complete estimate. Nobody knows what that will be until the process happens.
One of the things also that Judy, I know, and Sal, D'Angelo are working on is that because this can be sort of a hypersensitive issue, just like when we were doing the bond issue, we're working on a calculator that gives the best estimate of just our tax impact, our rates, so that you could go on and we would have the information that's best available to us, that someone could take their old assessment, their new assessment, and see a comparison. And then we would have a disclaimer saying that these are estimates with the best information that we have available from the town as of such and such date. And then as the grievance day goes forward, once that information will be updated, we would send out another SNN so that community members could do that. And then obviously, once we do our tax rate, people can go and check that. We found that was a very useful tool during the bond proposition over a year and a half ago, and people really responded because we had a variety of web hits on that. And we think that that would be a good
Yes.
I was just going to compliment you on giving that nice little tutorial on, you know, the tax assessment process and so forth. You know, I think one of the crucial things to look at is that, that little pie chart that references, you know, exactly what percentages of homes were reassessed at a higher level, which is a minority, and what, you know, really the silent majority are facing. Because you do read a lot, and I know it's all probably very shocking for people to think that politics enter into the discussion of really taking the data and then magnifying it for political purposes, even at our town level, to suggest that there's some machinations that are involved with the assessments. But I'm willing to bet that that 22% is probably a similar number as, you know, that is reflected in prior assessments from years ago. So thank you for that. You know, I always find it kind of, just my own editorial comment, I always find it kind of interesting that people love when the value of their property increases. Whoopee, you know, my property is worth more, yet when the assessment comes out and oops, my property's worth more and I actually owe more taxes on it. I just find that sort of an irony of, I don't know, maybe human nature, but I
Tempered with the
appreciate
lower rate, so.
Right, the rate comes down, I understand. But thank you for giving that. I thought that was helpful.
My pleasure.
Any other questions on the assessment? We're going to move into the budget stage through all the hard work of all the individuals throughout the past 4 or 5 board meetings. We're here to present to you what we feel is our best recommendation at this time, considering all the facets of how we would balance the budget for 2014-15 with the understanding of what we talked about at the previous meeting of around 2.99%, which would be under the maximum allowable tax levy limit, as well as the use of reserves at 1.4 million. The board has yet to finalize that. This is the last night. Judy's going to give you the overall presentation of those numbers, and then a final discussion, and then there is a resolution tonight, depending on what the board settles at there. But as we finish this, we want to know whether this is where the board wishes to adopt at this point. Then Judy will be all ready at the time the resolution provided you with final.
Thank you. At our last meeting, we had talked about setting the tax levy at 2.99%, which is the $1.835 million in additional revenues. And we had provided a range of fund balance. We had a little bit larger of a gap to close between last meeting and now. So our recommendation is to bump up the use of that fund balance to $1.4 million. This is still close with our longer-term financial projections, where we had been at $1.75 million use of fund balance over the last few years. This allows us to slowly wean ourselves back on that reliance of a funding source. Of course, it is a finite resource, and we are concerned about preserving the overall fiscal health of the district, maintaining cash flow, good credit ratings, and things of that nature. So those 2 elements are the key pieces for the revenue side. On the expenditure side, those reductions in district-wide type items are largely what we talked about at the last meeting, with the exception of we made some adjustments on one of the BOCES service items through reviewing those commitment forms. And then we also had talked about at the last meeting pre-purchasing some of our supplies for O&M and technology departments, and we're proposing $40,000 as the reduction there. That too is stepping us down from the level that we had done last year, which was about $221,000. So with those adjustments on the expenditure side, that brings us to the very happy text that you see on the bottom right corner, balanced, our goal at the start of this process, with a budget of $92,627,000. Now, what that looks like in terms of our total revenues, This chart just gives you what is part of our budget for 13-14. Shows you what we had presented way back in February when we started the process with our baseline budget, and then where we are with these final recommended totals. So the school taxes includes the 2.99% increase in the levy. The state aid is increased by the $580,000 in aid that was restored to us with the adoption of the state budget. And then the other revenue line has been bumped up, and that was based on fine-tuning of those estimates, largely relating to Medicare and Medicaid revenue sources that would come to the district. And then with the $1.4 million in the fund balance, puts us up to the $92.627 million. On the expenditure side, same format on this slide. You can see what those final totals look like by category. Our total salaries is up about 2.63%, and that is a much lower percentage than we have seen in the past. And again, that relates to the favorable settlement on all of the district's collective bargaining agreements. The fringe benefits are only up 2%. Low single digits is a very nice breaking budgetary piece of news for us, because as you know, in the past, we've faced significant cost pressures there from both retirement system rate increases as well as health insurance. And then the other line items are close to where they were at with our baseline budget. Again, our transfers and capital outlay, that 300,000 number includes the 100,000, remember, which is part of the capital outlay, where we're recommending we do phase 2 round of improvements for the high school pool. Another component of this, of course, ties it all together with our fund balance. One of the elements on the property tax report card requires disclosures on where you expect your fund balance to be as of June 30th, 2014. We are projecting about a $200,000 surplus, and based on that, we've recommended some shifts in those reserve amounts. Still keeping the undesignated portion of fund balance at a reasonable range. Remember, that cannot be any more than 4% of the subsequent year's appropriations, and that level is close to where it has been for this past year. You will see a new item on there, that mandatory reserve for $400,000. We are anticipating closing on the sale of 90 Adams Street within about another week. And recall that we had some debt service outstanding on that due to some roof improvements and HVAC improvements that had been done. So because that money is part of a larger bond issue that's outstanding, that we do not have the option to prepay, because of the structure of the bonds, we need to put $400,000 into this other reserve. So that would be part of our disclosures that would go to the state on the tax report card.
And Judy, on that, each year, the debt will come out of that mandatory reserve
Yes.
into the budget going forward.
It's about $45,000 a year in debt service associated for another 7 or 8 years. So that amount would allow that both the principal and the interest to be paid off. So that would start to appear as a revenue or a funding source in next year's budget and beyond. And again, this property tax report card is required to be submitted within 24 hours of budget adoption, and it will include the final spending limits, tax cap. There are disclosures on there as it relates to the exclusions that are part of that calculation. And it will show that if the budget is adopted at the 2.99% levy, that we are $80,000 lower than we would otherwise be permitted to go to with the tax cap calculation. Recall that was at 3.12%. So that.
So in general, for the board's consideration, as you've seen it, we've tried to respond to the board's questions over the past 2.5 months. We've also tried to get back onto our financial plan that was really put into place roughly 2.5 years ago to try to start addressing the drawdown of our fund balance, but yet maintain our curricular program. We're hoping that this maintains as much of our educational programs that we have, as well as provides what we hope would be reasonable to the board to present to the community, and that even if you went up to the maximum allowable tax levy, if that's any part of your discussions tonight, we would have to know that. I think my administrative recommendation is we get closer to our financial plan, which we also presented earlier, that if we went anywhere closer to the Mattel, that money would be to draw down fund balance. So that's pretty much our whole presentation in a nutshell. To the point, tonight is decision night and finality. And before we go into any other discussions, this is really the time for the board to let us know so that we can prepare the final paperwork.
I just have
Diane?
a question, just on the summary of expenditures. Just remind me with the debt services, because for some reason, I thought we were going down on that.
The debt service is relatively level for some of the outstanding older bonds that are in there, but we also are starting to have the bump up for some of the bond anticipation notes that are going to be issued as part of the capital project
new
that's
one.
starting
Okay.
as well.
Okay.
So it's relatively level, it's not a large increase, and this is actually very much in line with what we had projected when we had done the original presentations for the capital project. So we did have some debt coming off of the schedules, and that was partially
And now we're-
replaced by
Okay. All right,
the
that makes
capital
sense.
project.
Could you go back 2 more slides to slide 20? And the use of fund balances at $1.4 million. Can you remember what the range was from the last, I don't know if I know, from the last meeting?
1,375,000
Okay, that's
up
what I
to
thought it was.
1.4. It was a
Yeah, we said right around there
$25,000.
that we had about a $65,000 gap. We took 25 to make it an even number.
Okay.
Because he knows how I like to round.
Yeah. I'd like to round to the million, she likes to round to the thousand, so. But
And aren't you glad I'm doing it then?
I know. What happens is, I think our initial ranges was if we were at 3.12, we were recommending somewhere around 1,295 to 1,325 in fund balance. So both of those sort of slid.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else, any comments? No. Personally, I'm happy that we'd be able to stay at the 2.99. I know I mentioned that last week, and so I think, is that the consensus from the board? Okay.
Okay, so we'll have, Judy's going to take a couple moments to prepare the property tax report card as well as any potential resolutions. In addition, it's just while she's working on that, it's important to note that on the school tax report card, we also have to put in our highlights what the issues are for a contingency budget under the 3-part budget. It's important to know that if a budget is not successful and the district was forced into a contingency situation, you would have to see roughly about $200,000 reductions in administration costs, because it's all formula-based for what the reductions would have to be. You would have to have another $1.8 million in reductions for program, and you would have to have about $100,000 reductions in capital. As you can see, we really need to make sure we always stay away from a contingency budget, because I just don't know where $1.8 million out of our program would come from without drastic, draconian type of cuts. I mean, we'll have to look at how we convey that in the highlight, because it could mean athletics, all of it. It could mean certain fine and practical arts programs, all of them. It could be class sizes at the elementary exorbitantly high. We just don't know. I just don't know where the board would see those types of reductions, because it has to come out of program at that point.
Right, but that would be a second
That would be
vote.
after 2
Right,
votes
votes, right,
or a
right.
no vote. And of course, the board could always consider doing it right now, but I would advise against that, and I think the board would too. So we'll prepare that, and,
Yep, and we can move on?
Yep.
Because it's part of the next, not the next,
Yes.
but after that, is the resolution F and G. All right. At this time, the board would recognize any visitors that have, that would like to address the Board of Education on any agenda item. Is there anyone who would like to address the board? And if so, please come up to the microphone and state your name. We are being videotaped. Yep. And,
Speak directly into the mic.
yeah, and if you could speak directly into the mic, and as I'd mentioned last week, there is a 2-minute time limit, please.
Hi, we're here again from last week.
Yeah, we're glad to see you again.
We have I'm Aiden, I'm Morgan, and we brought Jillian. As you know, we were here last week. This week we actually have 6 kids. 3 of us are up here and 2 and 1 are over there. After the board meeting last week, we took a whole class period to just talk about what we had done last board meeting, and what we were going to do at this meeting. And a lot of people said they were going to come, and we have 6 people here, and we're just going to keep talking about why we think we should keep the Chinese program. So far, I have one major question. How are you going to get a Spanish teacher? It seems like Spanish is a hot subject, at least with the oncoming 6th graders, and with that filled up schedule, I was just wondering, how are you going to make room for an experienced teacher to do accelerated Spanish with what would come of the phased out students? Also, they would need to catch up after school as you presented, and along with other homework, they might start losing track, losing sleep, and start doing badly in school.
So I was once asked by someone, did I take Spanish? I said no, I took Chinese. They were awed. Chinese is very important to the people who take it, and if it was phased out, many would be disappointed. And the 7th graders, if they're going to do a 1.5 catch up, when they're in 10th grade, they still wouldn't be fully catched up for the Regents.
Another thing is, we had one of the kids in our class come up sometime the week before break and talk a lot about college credits for Chinese. He said that if they were going to end up keeping the Chinese program, he would also think that he also said that we should talk about what the language means to us and why we want to go or move all the way through high school, including 11th and 12th grade for Chinese. But the college credits, I understand that the class needs to be 17, have 17 students in it, and that limit has not been met this year. But we think that with the enthusiasm of the kids in our grade, at least in our grade and the 7th grade, we could probably meet those limits. And I don't know about the 8th graders. Maybe there's an 8th grade parent here that could talk about that. But 6th grade and 7th grade is what we've learned about. The 7th graders put up a petition by the House office, and every square inch of that paper was covered with signatures. We were going to bring it, but we didn't think we should take it down. Also, I was wondering, these 8th graders and 7th graders, they also have to get caught up like us, and that's also going to take time out of their schedule, like everybody else, and this teacher is going to have to plan for all of these catch-up students, and they have to take homework home. So a lot of time will be spent on catching up the years that they missed, and that may lead to just non-organization and having no time for other little things such as other homework, projects, and eventually those grades probably will go decreasing.
So, to everybody in our class, they really enjoy the program. And like Morgan said, every square inch on that petition was signed. If it's that important to people, and even people who don't even take Chinese, and if we could prove the importance to other people, it would be great, because the Chinese program is one of the reasons that Bethlehem School District, which a lot of people think is a great school district, is special and unique. And if we keep the program, it will just be great. And I'm at a loss for words, but it would really help. And I'm just rambling on, but
You're doing
it's
very
a
good.
lot to ramble on about. It's a great subject, and being caught up would be hard, and just keeping Chinese would be the best decision.
One other thing was there, as Miss Monroe said, it would be a 4-year phase out, and I know that the kids in our class, in the 6th grade class, would only get this year. We wouldn't be able to come back to it, and the kids who are in 7th and 8th grade, they would definitely not come back to it. So if you end up having to phase it out, maybe like a shorter phase out time would be more effective, and I think that would also help a lot with the level of popularity of the Chinese program. Maybe maybe the first year it comes back, that year will be more popular. That year there will be more students taking Chinese. I think if the decision comes to phase it out, you should make it a shorter phase out time.
Thank you very much for your comments. You guys have done a great job.
Hi, I'm Robin Holstein, and this is Amy Cohen. We are Ellesmere PTA Vice Presidents in charge of Playground. I wrote a really nice 3-4 page story about why we're here tonight, but I couldn't speak fast enough to get it all in 2 minutes. So we are here to present a check to the Board of Education. Before we do, we would like to thank a few people.
Most notably, we over the last year and a half have raised $75,000 towards replacing the playground at Ellesmere Elementary School. And I just want to list a few of our top donors, I guess is the best way to put it. So Berkshire Bank Foundation, the Kiwanis Club both gave us $5,000. We're very grateful for that. Bethlehem Business Women's Club, Beano's Opticians, Capital District Pediatric Dentistry, Nationwide Insurance, Macy's, M&T Bank, My Place, Price Chopper, Schools Out, and Stewart's Shops. And there are lots and lots more, but those are just a few
Our biggest supporters.
of our biggest supporters. We also want to thank the PTA board members, Greg Nolte, Dr. Douglas, Kate Kloss, all the students at Ellesmere for their support, the families at Ellesmere, and I guess formally request that the Board of Education accept our donation of $75,000.
That is an agenda item that we'll be voting on afterwards, but.
Okay.
Once we get to that point.
It's a small
if
check,
we
it's not one of
can
those
do-
big ones.
If we can get a photo with your group, as well as I think if the principals are here and the board as well, that would be helpful, especially seeing how we'll be starting the project tomorrow.
When bids go out.
Sorry. Sorry, Amy.
Don't get our hopes up like that.
You've got us on this roller coaster.
It's been a long time, so.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. I am Meryl Schwab, Glenmont PTA president. This is Amy Scharf and Anne Marie Farrell, our Project Playground coordinators and chairpeople. And over the past 15 months, the Project Playground Committee and the Glenmont PTA have worked to secure funding to replace the Glenmont Playground. The goal is to build a playground that is safe, fun, challenging, and will serve all of our students, including those with special needs. This was a monumental undertaking by our volunteer committee of parents, teachers, students that coordinated with area businesses and organizations. Several Project Playground fundraising events took place, including our Fall Fun Day back in September, our Glenmont Gold Gala on March 1st. Even our students and teachers got involved, holding scarf sales and lemonade stands and a readathon. We had bracelet sales, all kinds of change collections going on to support our cause. Our efforts extended to corporate sponsorship, direct appeals, grant writing to secure the funding. The Glenmont PTA is proud to make a donation to the Bethlehem Central School District and the Board of Education for $93,000 and another $7,000 in-kind services for the demolition of the existing playground for a total of $100,000.
Thank you very much. And we'll be voting on that again in that section, yes.
We would just like to thank the board and the district for working with us on this project. As Meryl indicates, it's been a huge endeavor for the volunteers, students, and staff at Glenmont. As a parent in the district, I just want to say that we do believe in the power of play. In this ever-increasing testing environment, we believe playgrounds are an important part of our school day and of our school buildings. So thank you for support. We appreciate the support that the community has made, and we really look forward to building that playground for the students and the community of Bethlehem. And we really think it's going to be a fantastic thing. Bethlehem's noted for the school district, and we hope moving forward that will be noted for our great playground. So thank you, and congratulations to Ellesmere as well.
Anyone else like to address the board?
Hi, my name's Tina Mancuso, and I'm here to talk about Chinese. I took what the board said to us about Chinese 2 weeks ago very literally, and Dr. Douglas was gracious enough to meet with us this morning, myself and Joan Myron. And so I went on a 2-week campaign to try to find a Chinese teacher for Bethlehem. I was able to connect with a guy named Robert Smythe. He teaches Chinese for the Albany City School District. He, last night, because everybody was on vacation last week, was able to give me 2 women who, along with their resumes, that are able to teach Chinese for next year. I've also had a lot of contact with the Chinese community and a lot of support to help us to find that teacher. I would still like the board to support phasing out the program, even for the middle school children. The kids are committed. They're wonderful. I know it's hard, and everybody's got an opinion. So I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hello again, I'm Joan Myron. I don't want to repeat my comments from 2 weeks ago where I reiterated I thought that there was a commitment to these students, and I personally would never have gambled on my daughter's education and essentially wasted 2 years of a language. Having already said that, I'll move on to a different topic, which I'm looking forward to the parent night to talk about what accelerated Spanish means, because even though we had a nice discussion with Dr. Douglas this morning, I don't understand how 6th, 7th, and 8th grade Spanish can be made up in 8th grade. I have a 12th grader who went through the middle school and took 3 years of Spanish, and I asked her today, and she's a very good student, Emily, could you have done it in 1 year. And she looked at me like I was crazy. So somehow I'm not comprehending how you can do 3 years of language in one successfully. I would like to see the data to show students who have done that 1-year accelerated program, how they fare in high school against the students who have had 3 years. So that's my principal question. I just don't see how it can happen. Now, I've also heard from my current 7th grader that instead, next year they may do a 1.5-year accelerated, not the 3. And like these students pointed out, if she only makes up a 1.5 years, she essentially at the end of 8th grade is only midway through what her contemporaries did in 7th grade. She is then further behind. She will go well into the 11th grade to complete her language requirements needed for the New York Regents, as I understand it. She's going into 11th grade. She would have, if she had been on track, completed them in 10th grade. As I previously stated, she's my art student. She is trying to take advantage of all the electives available to her in the high school to determine what her career path might be if it indeed is going to be in art. And she's going to be robbed of those opportunities through no fault of her own or her parents, because we didn't know we were all gambling on Chinese. I support your decision to phase out the program. I appreciate how difficult it is to find a certified, visa-proven person to teach this class. But we made a commitment, and you should phase it out for those who are already committed to the program and not let new students in. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
My name is Joanna Goldberg, and I have a 9th grader who said he would have happily come tonight, but he's studying for Chinese. So I just wanted to ask a couple questions, first of all, and I do appreciate that. I'm sure you've given this consideration. I was here 2 years ago when we had the same discussions. I actually feel like you've all made a lot of my arguments tonight. You talked about how, in terms of the lab school, it was important to keep the staffing for this year, even though your numbers in your classes are below what your required thresholds are, so people have time to think about it so you can come up with solutions. You announced tonight a working group, and you want parent representation on it. Chinese was not given that opportunity. Was not given that opportunity 2 years ago. Hasn't been given it now. If my husband hadn't been sitting here at the board meeting that he found it out because my son was being honored, another son for Odyssey, we wouldn't have known. And then a week later, it was announced your decision, and I understand you need to move, and I understand this isn't your only decision, and believe me, I know firsthand the difficulties with the Chinese teachers. But if it is a visa issue with her, as I understand it is,
We can't
no, I'm not
discuss
asking you to
personnel
just,
matters.
okay, that's fine, but it's something that I believe could have been ascertained all the way back in September. And had you asked any of the parents, invited us in to try to come up with solutions, you would have had a very proactive, committed group of parents, at least from the 9th graders that I know. My son has 17 kids in his class. As far as I know, they're all planning and willing, would like to take it all through 12th grade. And I also was not told that he wouldn't have the opportunity to take it for all 4 years. I was never told you were requiring 2 sections a year to keep it going. That's news to all of us. You didn't give warning or anything, and you're not giving us the same courtesy as the lab school parents to have us have an opportunity to work with you to come up with a solution. So that's my first point. I'd also like to wonder, after their sophomore year, what the attrition rates are from Spanish and French. And if it's this, if Chinese isn't that much significantly higher, why are you so surprised? Kids do drop languages after 10th grade. You just have a smaller sample size with Chinese, so you're not able to absorb it the same way. But you knew that. I mean, you've known that for years. So I'm just not sure why we all couldn't have gotten together sooner, and why we can't do it now, why you can't give us that courtesy also. And then the only other thing I wanted to bring up as a practical matter, because I think what everybody can agree upon is that the kids at any level, and these kids have spoken very well tonight, they're the ones who made an honest commitment, who took on a challenge, and are the ones that are being hurt. They didn't do anything, nothing, they have no real play in this. They just have to do what happens. So I'd like a commitment that for all the kids who are taking Chinese, who have to switch after their sophomore year, who would be willing to go on, if that's not a solution we can come up with, that it is noted on their transcripts that that was not their choice. Because quite frankly, if my son is running really good grades in Chinese, which he is, and he applies to the type of schools that good schools. I'd like them to know it wasn't his choice to decide to stop taking the language and not go further on in studies. Because every school that I've spoken to, everybody who's taken their kids to schools has said they're looking for additional study in language to show commitment. And I don't want it to respect poorly on him a decision that he had no say in. And I'd also like those kids after 9th, 10th grade to have priority into Latin. It's very hard to get into Latin. They're not the ones who are choosing to drop their language. It's not their call. I would also point out that Latin only runs for 2 years, doesn't have advanced study in it, I don't believe. And how many sections do you run a year of Latin? I don't know. But if it's only one section, why have we not discussed why the Latin program, which I fully support, is running? Why are we running different standards for different things? And your representative made the point that you have to.
You've
Okay.
exceeded your 2 minutes. Thank you. Anyone else to address the board? All right. Moving on, we're on to item number 8, Finance. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following finance action items A through G, although we do need Judy back to give us the numbers for G.
I would ask you if you would separate them out and read
Okay.
F and G.
Can I have a motion to separate A through E and F through G?
So moved.
That's the first and second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. So we'll act on items, Section 8, items A through E.
So moved.
It's a first and a second. Any discussion? I would just like to, again, this is where we're going to accept the various donations and to all the entities, Ellesmere and Glenmont. The Bethlehem Music Association is also making a donation tonight, and the Gymnastics Boosters Club are also making a donation. So on behalf of the board, I'd like to express our deepest thanks and gratitude to those organizations. Anyone else? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. And now, Section 8, Item F, adopt the budget. The school budget for the 2014-15 school year is recommended that the Board of Education adopt the 2014-15 spending plan of the Bethlehem Central School District in the amount of
$92,627,000.
to be presented to the voters at the annual meeting on May 20th, 2014, from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. at the Bethlehem Central High School. Item G is the property tax report card for the 2014-15 school year. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the property tax report card for the 2014-15 school year as per attached, and authorize the property tax report to be submitted to the New York State Education Department.
And all the figures are as per the draft that you have, which reflect the 299 tax increase and the 2.45 increase in the budget-to-budget expenditures.
Okay.
So, you need a move?
Yes, I need a
So
motion.
moved.
That's the first? Second, okay. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. Item number 9, professional personnel. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following instructional staff action items A through G.
So moved.
That's a first.
Second.
And a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. Item 10, support personnel. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following support staff action items A through D.
So moved.
That's a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. Item number 11, correspondence for action. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following correspondence action items A through C.
So moved.
Second.
That's a first and a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That carries. At this time, the board would recognize visitors who would like to address the board on any non-agenda items.
I already know what he's going to announce now because he sent me an email.
Yes.
And you are subject to a 2-minute time limit.
I'll be very brief. You know me. I just wanted to share with the board and our community something they should be very proud of. U.S. News and World Report came out, and over 19,000 schools across the country were ranked, and Bethlehem ended up at 421. and we were 49th in New York State. So well done to everybody here. Just figured you should know that.
Thank you.
That is also now on our website. We will be changing our U.S. News Report from a silver medal to their top medal of gold, which has been a desire for this high school faculty and staff. So.
Already changed.
Oh.
I just wanted to update everybody on Danny. She's actually in the bottom 3 on The Voice. If you have Twitter on your phone right now, tweet hashtag Voice Save Danny, because it's only a couple minutes before they're doing elimination.
Oh.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay. Future meetings. And I don't know, did any participation in government students come in? Guess not. If they did, you do need
This
to
is
come
an
up and
off
sign up.
night for them.
Okay. They're not used to Tuesday night. They're all going to be here tomorrow night thinking we have a meeting. Future meetings, Tuesday, May 6th is Meet the Candidates Night. Wednesday, May 7th is the budget hearing. Tuesday, May 20th is the budget vote and annual election. And then Wednesday, May 21st, we have a regular Board of Education meeting here.
We can do the announcement that there's 4 running, all of you are here.
Okay, and there are 4 candidates running for the Board of Education. I will just list them in the order that they're going to be. Myself, Joanne Cunningham, Jonathan Fishbein, and Christine Beck. Good luck to everybody. Yes?
Can I ask a question on the Wednesday, the 7th meeting? Is there going to be an executive session before that 6 o'clock budget hearing?
We just put 6 o'clock because that's when exec session
Oh,
starts.
that is going to be executive,
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
budget hearing's going to be at 7?
Be at
Okay,
7,
thank you.
Yep.
So, and just so that for the Meet the Candidates Night, the forum will be similar to last year. We are awaiting the confirmation from the League of Women Voters. It will be here in the cafeteria, which we will also be posting a story tomorrow so that there can be any type of announcement so people can come out for that evening.
Mr. Fishbein, see you
It's a-
afterwards?
I've already actually saw Mr. Fishbein about photos.
Yep, okay, good. There is no need for us to go back into executive session, and we will do a picture with the Glenmont and the Ellesmere PTAs after this. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So we'll,
That's the first and second. All in favor? Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for coming out.